Today we visit a Lake Tahoe resort as well as a secluded woodland garden nestled at the base of the 8,500-foot Sierra Nevada Buttes. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned as we garden smart from Tahoe National Forest.
Rainbird has a deep-rooted understanding of the role water plays in our lives. Rainbird takes the challenges very seriously of using water effectively, efficiently, and responsibly. The intelligent use of water guides everything we do.
If green is all you see in shrubs, open your eyes to a colorful new world. Proven Winners Color Choice Flowering Shrubs is a proud sponsor of GardenSMART.
Organic gardening is in the news. For over 25 years, Smart World Organics, a subsidiary of American Soil Technologies, has manufactured organic products for the green industry. Smart World Organics, focused on your growing success.
At Subaru, we care about preserving the environment. That's why we build our vehicles in zero landfill plants, which produce less landfill waste in a year than a single-family household in a day. Subaru, a proud sponsor of GardenSMART.
I'm here today with Mark Saposnik, who is the Marketing and PR Director for a beautiful resort in Squaw Valley. Mark, it's easy to see why so many people flock to this part of Lake Tahoe. It is so beautiful. There's so much to see, so much to do. I understand this was also the site of the 1960 Winter Olympics, and you guys are coming up on a major anniversary, your 50th anniversary next year. Tell us a little bit about the area.
Yeah, well, Lake Tahoe is a year-round paradise. I mean, it's a destination that people come to in the wintertime for skiing. We have 15 ski resorts all around the lake. In the summertime, it's a very popular destination, of course, with the lake activities that you find here. Kayaking on the lake is an experience not to be missed with the underwater boulder fields, the clarity of the water. It's really a remarkable place to visit. Here at Squaw Valley, this was the site of the 1960 Winter Olympics. And coming up, we have the 50th anniversary, and with festivities planned for the entire season. So it's going to be really a great time to be up here this winter.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, it's neat to see the slopes without the snow. We can see all the rock outcroppings, the trees, the vegetation. Of course, we're a long way up right now. We're sitting up on this cable car, I don't know how many 100 feet above this mountain range, and it's an incredible view.
Yeah, the views are spectacular at Lake Tahoe, whether you're at lake level or up here on a mountain peak or on the cable car here at Squaw Valley, USA. Mark,
tell me how much snow you guys get. Of course, it must be considerable. We're at a pretty high elevation.
Yeah, the mountain peaks around Lake Tahoe can receive in upwards of 400 inches per year. So it's not uncommon, to find 15 feet of snow at the top of the mountains during the winter months.
That's incredible. Mark, summertime's beautiful here as well. The low humidity, crystal clear skies, and of course, it seems like a place that plants will be quite happy.
Yeah, this definitely is. In the summer months, many activities, biking, hiking, all kinds of things to do in the summertime. And many people here do love to garden. Our gardening season is relatively short, but they absolutely love it.
Mark, we're a long way up and I'm ready to get my feet back on the ground. There's a great woodland garden that we're going to go take a look at. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We're here in the middle of this tranquil woodland paradise, which is the home place of Don Phillips. Don, it must take a rather unusual man to undertake a project of this magnitude. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's been a long and wonderful journey. And it started actually in the Navy. When I went into the Navy, I was just 18 and had a wonderful career in the Navy. And after that, I went into agriculture up in the Chico area, Chico, California. And from there, I gravitated into agribusiness and spent roughly 10 years in that pursuit. And that got me more interested in the business world, and so I wanted to go back to Stanford, which I did, and completed my master's degree. And for 10 years, I was assistant dean of the Stanford Business School. At the end of that time, when the dean left, that was the end for me as well. I wanted to do other things, and I acquired a 13-acre parcel of undeveloped land in Monterey, California. And I built that out into apartments, waterfront apartments, and had a wonderful time doing that and running that for 20 years. Then I sold and came up to this area and started developing this garden. So this actually was in 1988, and I've spent roughly 20 years now bringing the garden to the point where it is now.
Wow.
That was building the house, the pond, and all the other things you'll see.
Well, I know you have a lot to show us. Let's go ahead and get started. Well, Don, in many ways, this is where it all began, under the shade of these fantastic trees and not that far from the mouth of this beautiful spring. I want you to tell me a little bit about what you found when you encountered this site and how you got started.
Well, in the beginning, that would have been in the 1960s. I used to park down on the road and hike into this property. And at that point, it was quite a wilderness. The trees had fallen over. There was a lot of debris on the ground, brush, all types of things. And in the beginning, I didn't have much time, but I would come up here and rake and burn a little bit. And I discovered as I started to clean up the property, wildflowers started to appear, and I found that to be beautiful. I never started out to create a garden. What I was doing was just working with nature, and I thought making it a little bit more beautiful, a little more usable. And over those early days, we did some camping up here. I brought the boys up. We'd park on the highway, pack our things in. And then we started building trails, and you'll see them out all through the area. In the beginning, to get from down where the home is now up here was a major undertaking. And now, as you can see, looking down the trails, they're all built with switchbacks, they're all graveled, and you can make the transition from down below up into this area.
Well, it's definitely a very different place today, and as you said, you know, you've opened the forest up in a sense and made it much more accessible for visitors. Don, you've owned this property for over 40 years. Has your sentiments towards the property or your perspective on the property changed in that time?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's changed completely. It's evolved. In the beginning, I thought it was a nice piece of property, but frankly, I wasn't in love with it. Over the period of time that I came up here, started raking, doing the different things, and then camping with not just with my sons, but with my friends, and spending more time. I came to realize that I did not own this land, that the land owned me, and I became a part of it. I spent more time out in nature, studying it and realizing what was here. It was always the capability of the site that intrigued me, so that's what led me into then moving on to the further development of the property.
I understand you had a fire here some years ago that in many ways triggered the early developments.
Oh, it did. In 1970, I'd only owned the property some 8 or 10 years, and I got a call at work, and they said there'd been a fire on my property, but not to worry about it because they'd put it out. At my first opportunity, I came up and discovered about an acre of beautiful big trees that had been burned. And of course, you feel how badly you feel that those trees were destroyed. But in later, then I realized, after I cleaned up the mess, that was a perfect site for building the home. So basically, out of something that was bad, something good came of it.
You've done a great job of blending nature with, with your future home site. Show me the next step in the process. Don, this place looks like it's been here for hundreds of years, yet I know it's fairly recent construction. Tell me a little bit about the progression of the development of the home and the pond.
Well, actually, this is more or less remembrances of things of the past. And if I think about the house, I remember that when I was in high school, not quite high school, grade school, my older brother took me to Lake Decatur, and we stayed in a house on the lake. And it was similar to this house. It had loft bedrooms on either side, and I carried that dream around with me for over 50 years. And one night we're having dinner with the architect who did this home, and I asked him if he would do the plans for it, and he did. And you'll notice when you go in, look in the house, all of it opens out, all of the windows, the views of the buttes and the views of the pond. So basically, it's a dream that's come true for me, because I had dreamed of having a home like that, and now it's been my good fortune to have that. When it comes to the pond is an interesting thing because I've always loved nature. I've always been close to water. So when I came here, all of where the pond is now was just scrub. And the reason for that, it was because it was clay. And so nothing would grow there. So I combined in my mind the idea that I had a lot of water, I had clay, and it was a perfect place, and I could now have my home on the water just like that home was on the water in Lake Decatur.
You know, I know over the last 20 years, this whole site has evolved with you as a person. There's a number of other places you want to show us. Let's take a look at some of those. Building a pond is so much more than just digging a big hole and tossing some rocks around the edge of it. One of the most impressive things you've done with this place is make the pond look like it actually fits the site, the way the banks wind around the edge of the forest. I want you to tell me how you put this together.
Well, I think that when you're trying to build something and make it look natural is more difficult than if it was just artificial. My concept when I started with this was that I wanted this to feel like a glacier. It'd come down off the hill and it was grinding and pushing boulders in front of it. And when it got to this point, it receded and stopped, and it left this natural looking pond, and the boulders were strewn about it in such a way. And so basically that was the way it started evolving. And when we first cut, if you take this area over in here, we cut and we filled. And in the beginning, you feel like you've destroyed nature rather than making it more beautiful. And then nature comes along and enhances it. We planted boulders, we put the boulders in, and as you'll notice, they're placed in a natural kind of way, the way you'd find them if you look down in the stream bed. And if you look up in here, you see that the meadow has reclaimed that area. There are some plants that we planted, but also nature takes over and puts it back and heals it. The other thing was that the pond originally, as in my original view, was not anything of this size or scope, but as we came along, you could see that if you would, here you'd pull out a point, and there you'd dig into the hillside. Here you'd come out with a curvature. And this was important to me, that so many artificial ponds are rounded out. This one we worked very hard to pull back in and to get that depth, because it gives a different feeling for the whole thing. So the whole thing was, as the pond grew, and I drained and resculpted the pond a number of times in order to get it to where I felt that it felt natural. And that was always my driving desire, was to make it natural. If you see outcropping, for instance, if we look at this, here is an outcropping of stone. And there's a big boulder we brought in and buried into here so that it would look like a natural. So that's why when you get all through, if you pay enough attention to the detail, in the end, the overview then gives you that feeling of natural. At least I hope so.
Oh, it definitely does. Definitely does. There's so many wonderful focal points around the pond. One that I'd love for you to touch on is your bridge. It looks like it's Asian inspired. It definitely draws your eye to the back of the pond. What was your thought on that bridge?
Well, to begin with, my feeling about the bridge is that I stole the idea from Monet's garden in Giverny. I say stole it, I borrowed it. In the same way that Monet borrowed that bridge from the Japanese woodblock, I believe it was Hiroshiki's woodblock print. So basically all of these ideas that we think are new are not new. They've been around, and we simply adapt them to what our needs are and to our particular site, which is so important.
Don, I think one of the most impressive features of your garden are these beautiful rock walls. These are not traditional stack stone walls, it's actually a dry wall, which is incredibly difficult to make. There's a real artistry to that, matching up the different sizes of stones, and they're just set on a slight slope so that water basically can perk through, and the stones basically are held in place. Of course, these walls feed into a beautiful lawn area, and that's a little bit of a fish out of water, if you will, when it comes to natural gardens. So my question to you is, why turf, Don?
Well, first of all, the grass is here because, number one, I think it's beautiful. The second thing is it's functional, and beauty and function are two pretty important things. The functional is that over the years, the family and friends have always used the lawn. There's been tennis out there. They've played back and forth. They've had badminton, they've had sunbathing, just a number of things. So it's been a very important part of the family activities, and it takes place right here between the pond and the house.
A really nice element in your lawn area are these little boulders that pop up. As you said earlier, they're mostly buried, and they break up this large expanse of green space, and they do bring some of that natural beauty into even a very functional lawn area. You know, for many gardeners, especially in shade gardens, they want their boulders to look natural, and they want moss growing on top of the boulder, but it's hard to get moss to establish on a boulder. Great way to grow moss on a boulder is to collect some moss, put it in a blender with some buttermilk, and spread it out on the rock, and in just a little while, you'll have a nice crop of moss on your rocks, giving them a nice natural look. For more great information and gardening tips, visit our website at GardenSMART.com. Don, you have provided a perfectly wonderful canvas for all the many plants that are around this area. I want to touch on a handful of them that have done particularly well on this site, and ones that really embody the spirit of the natural garden here. Of course, some of the plants you've got around the water's edge are ones that we might call colonizers. They're ones that have the ability to spread out and fill their space. And of course, they're doing a really good job of basically growing the way that you would see them growing in nature. Right in front of us, we've got these beautiful water lilies, or nymphia. You've got a number of wonderful colors there, from the creamy, buttery yellows and whites to some even intense purple ones. Wonderful water accent. Of course, we see the native Indian rhubarb over there. It's right at home here. Those are ones that basically just volunteer. They add a nice tropical, lush appearance to the bank. Another great plant that is obviously super happy is Iris pseudacris, or the flag iris, right over here.
One of the great things about that is you can start with just a small clump of iris, and it will spread and march right down into the deeper water and blooms profusely.
They do look great. You know, one thing about a natural garden is it's not necessarily a native garden. Natives are wonderful, and of course they occur spontaneously in the natural garden, but there are many cultivated varieties in the natural garden. It's simply that the philosophy behind the natural garden is that things are put out in, instead of a regimented way, a way that would be more indicative of how Mother Nature would plant those plants.
Well, I think a good example of that, and one we haven't talked about here today, is this mixed forest of conifers, and they were part of the natural garden. So the philosophy has been here is to fit into nature. I've always said that nature is the senior partner and we're the junior partners, and we fit in. So in my mind, even though we've embellished the gardens, 99% of it was here. The big tall trees were here, The water was here, the terrain was here, and all we've done is add to the beauty and make it more livable and useful to us.
You know, pretty much the birth of natural gardening, of course it's existed all throughout the ages, but where it really rose into prominence was through Capability Brown, who was a landscape architect, if you will, but he had a very different way of looking at gardening or landscaping, and ended up coining the term landskip, which was his way of expressing this philosophy of working with nature, not fighting nature, having your planting look like something that you say would walk around a corner and there it is. And so we're getting away from the very regimented formal gardens of Versailles and moving towards something that's well more at home on the hillside.
One of the things that I've really felt about this garden was that there was no landscape architect as such. This has been a case, as you point out, by Capability Brown. What was the capability of the site? What was it? And I think by spending time in nature, that it reveals itself to you as you go along. And after you've done that, you can't see too far ahead, but after you've seen this, then the new vista opens to you and the garden just reveals itself. So I never started out to make a natural garden. I started out to make it more beautiful, and that's what I hope we've done.
You've definitely done that. Yet in your garden, you've incorporated a lot of cultivated varieties. One that I noticed as we were coming in were the tea roses that are right over here on your fence.
Yes, well, they tie in, and also the ballerina roses. And the idea of the ballerina roses was because there was a small clump of wild roses here, and when I saw the ballerina roses in the nursery, I thought, oh, well, they're just almost indigenous to this area. We'll plant a lot of them, which we did. They require practically no care, and they bloom profusely.
Another part of this site that I want to point out, because I feel like you've done such a good job at that, are the transitional areas from the pond edge into the forest. You've sprinkled Japanese maples throughout. We see a lot of other native trees like the tag alders, the quaking aspens. There's a beautiful row of native azaleas, and I can imagine that just lights this site up when those are in bloom. And with as wonderful as all of these plants are, there's no question about the fact that the star of this show is the fact that all of this is framed by the Sierra Nevada buttes in the background. They are breathtaking. Don, in walking your garden today, it's apparent that you have a passion for water. From the top of the garden to the bottom, there's the wonderful sound of babbling brooks and waterfalls, and it's a wonderful touch.
Yes, well, think what an opportunity I've had to have a property to work with like this, with all of this water. If you look behind us here, where the water comes out of the pond, and we've made it into a natural stream bed. If you take the bubbler that we looked at earlier, here's the water, and that's a memory from my childhood. If you take Paradise Pond, wherever, but water is such a key element to our lives. And here we've been able to utilize that to bring about the tranquility that you're speaking of.
Don, this is a great example of a natural garden. I think there are wonderful lessons here for each one of us. Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Well, it's been my pleasure to have you here. I love sharing the garden, and to share it with so many people means a lot to me. It's been a wonderful day, and thank you so much.
Well, another show, another beautiful garden. We hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we've enjoyed producing it. Coming up, we'll be filming one show featuring the construction of a Tournament of Roses parade float, and another show that will chronicle an eco-friendly landscape makeover. We've got a surprise in store for several in the audience. To learn more about these shows and the surprise, visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com.
Rainbird has a deep-rooted understanding of the role water plays in our lives. Rainbird takes the challenges very seriously of using water effectively, efficiently, and responsibly. The intelligent use of water guides everything we do.
If green is all you see in shrubs, open your eyes to a colorful new world. Proven Winners Color Choice Flowering Shrubs is a proud sponsor of GardenSMART.
Organic gardening is in the news. For over 25 years, Smart World Organics, a subsidiary of American Soil Technologies, has manufactured organic products for the green industry. Smart World Organics, focused on your growing success.
At Subaru, we care about preserving the environment. That's why we build our vehicles in zero landfill plants, which produce less landfill waste in a year than a single-family household in a day. Subaru, a proud sponsor of GardenSMART.
For many people, the natural garden is a bit off the beaten path. If you have any questions about today's show, visit our website at GardenSMART.com. And remember, even if you're a master gardener, there's always more to learn. So tune in next week for more great gardening tips and information as we garden smart.